Welcome to our December Housing Task Force meeting. Thank you for the flexibility on this month's scheduling based on kind of a lot was happening coinciding with last month's meeting. So I think it's good timing because we've got a lot that's going on, especially with the Planning Commission, their work for the town plan, as well as an excitement of what could be potentially for next year as we head into the spring, even though it's now snowing. So the first item up on our agenda is the review and the approval of the minutes from the previous meeting. I did not print them out, but did you have a chance to see it?
No.
Okay. Would you like to
If you got it.
scoot over it? You can just scroll right there. Oop, there you go. I did have a chance to look over. Oh,
I'm not a good computer
good.
guy, just so you know.
you can just use the
Oh,
down
gotta
arrows.
use the down up
Yep.
arrow, there you go.
And Joanne, did you get the copy of the item that I sent out to you?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep. And Joanne, Cindy's got hers.
So aren't the minutes supposed to be in our shared folder in the folder that says meetings?
They are. I think it didn't get put into. I didn't move it.
Not until they get approved, right?
We could probably still put them in our share folder. They don't technically get posted to the website until they've been, draft minutes need to be posted to the website, and then they're not supposed to be removed for 1 year.
Yeah,
So,
didn't know
Cindy,
which
I
side
will-
was going to. I went to our folder and I was
Okay.
that's fine.
Yeah,
So is
they go to this town site.
But I'll make sure they get there next time.
That's fine.
Okay.
I wasn't there, so I can't approve, but
That's right. Okay. So, is there a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll make a motion.
A
Okay,
second.
John makes the motion. Tim seconds. Any discussion? All in favor of approval, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That is unanimous.
no. I
Leon is
abstain,
not here. Yes,
And I abstain.
correct. You were not there. All right, so the next thing on the list is committee and subgroup reports. This is time for us to kind of talk about how we've been working together or off separately on a lot of things. So development and planning is the first up, so that's you if you want to jump on it.
Well, been working on a lot, I thought we were gonna meet in the other room, but this is fine, I guess. I mean,
Yeah.
I've got a sketch of, airport, thinking about the airport property. A sketch of a proposed development, if this is Airport Road up through here, this is the industrial park
Yep.
right there. There will be a road up through here, 30-acre lots with 49 houses on 30-acre lots.
I mean, what was the number again? 39?
49.
49, okay.
Yep. Trying to get a sale price of around 200,000, which would meet the affordability range. I've got a guy that's looked at houses, and I've got some sketches of the houses if you want to look at them. I mean, I've got a couple packets here, I could hand out what I got. These are basically just.
How many bedrooms on this one?
Well, the ones in that range would be 2-bedroom, 2-bath, about 1,000, 1,100 square feet.
Yep.
Um,
That's, yeah.
Eh.
That's about what we're doing with ours in Bennington, our 2-bedroom.
And the development cost, or the builder, was in at about 175 to 176,000. And that's for everything from the beginning of the project throughout the project. So the driveway, water, sewer, electric, and then the balance of it, depending on how the town works it out, or how we can work it out with the town, this 175 would go to the builder, and the balance would go towards the purchase or infrastructure, getting the water and sewer to the project from Richfield Road. There's a couple options. You could go up, you could run the water and sewer up Airport Road, which would be a little more expensive. The other option would be going across another person's piece of property, and I don't know if we should bring it up now who it is, or we can or not.
This is obviously advisory, so,
The Levis's property.
okay.
Because there is water and sewer up to his property. It might not be, I think the sewer is the right size. I think the water's got to be upgraded a little bit. I think it's 6-inch, and it's got to be 8-inch for fire protection, fire hydrants, which I'm pretty sure the fire department would want up there. I'm not sure. Haven't got into that much into it. This is just a concept at this point in time. But that would be obviously a lot cheaper, because it's a lot shorter route to go with the water and sewer. There's other projects in town we're looking at. There's the Gap building. They're talking about putting a few apartments in there, I think 3 upstairs, maybe 2 downstairs, in that building.
Recording in
Met
progress.
with a guy, I don't know if we can talk about our meeting this morning, Gordon? Is that public? The meeting this morning with the guy looking at the town property? I mean, there was a guy this morning that came in and looked at the town buildings, putting apartments in there, or townhouses in there. But those prices are quite a bit more. They're in the 400-ish range, 4 to 495 range, which is not in my mind, it's not affordable. I think the only way we're going to find anything affordable is do something like this. There's really not much place in town. I mean, there is a little bit of property in front of the town hall, to the north of the town hall, that maybe could put a few houses on. There's property across the street, which possibly, if we could talk to the owner there, we could put a few houses on. It's my understanding that in the town center right here now, with this Act 250 moratorium or whatever, I don't think we're going to have to get, in this area, we wouldn't have to get an Act 250 permit. When it comes to the airport, talking with Janet Hurley, it could be as far as maybe 2026, depending on how the town plan goes and all this, before that project would be exempt from Act 250. And if this project does require Act 250, got a price of around $5,000 per lot, which would be added into the cost of the 175 for the developer builder. So that would be another $5,000 less. Instead of the town getting 25, the town would only get 20 towards each lot in the property. The town's going to gain quite a bit, because if you have 49 houses at 200,000, the tax base that's going to increase will be quite a bit. So that'll, that can offset some of the costs there too as well. And there are grants out. Nothing in this project any grants have been included in any of this project. So if there are grants out there that could help lower the cost or defray part of the cost, that could either go to the prospective buyer, it could go to the town, we could figure out. I mean, it's all up to us to figure out how we want to divvy up what we could get. But, that's pretty much
That's,
what I've been working on.
that's a lot. So a couple questions. Go.
Can I say something?
Yes,
The priority housing, which is based on the Act 250 exemptions, the priority housing that we've been discussing too, is, it's in the designated neighborhood area, and that's where most of the money from grants would come from. So when you talk about the airport road, that's outside of the
That one,
The
yeah,
designations,
that one
so-
parcel is just outside the cusp.
Yeah, so
So,
are you looking at places within the designated area that is considered the priority housing?
well, we are too, but again, the cost to purchase the property or to get a parcel in that area is expensive, and then that just raises the cost of the house. So that doesn't,
But there might be some money to purchase that property,
if there is, that'd be great.
yeah.
so.
So I think one of, sorry, not to cut you off, Joanne, right there, actually, to act on your point, though, is that if one of the designations for the neighborhood designation, the priority housing district, right, is you have to be within a certain distance from the municipal water and sewer. The question, and obviously,
No, well, the money is, the infrastructure is there within the neighborhood.
right, but like, for instance, you know, there was a potential interested party in looking at the Ways Lane property, right? That was within a certain distance from
Right.
sewer, which allowed them to be part of this district. My
Right.
question is that if an investment from the town or whomever to increase the water sewer access that made this applicable, that could then change that designation very quickly, is my point, John.
Well,
Well,
I did ask that
Oh, you
question.
did, okay.
But I think that it's, the designation is the area.
Okay.
Right now, whatever area is designated now. Before that area changes, goes outside of town one way or the other, or farther one way or the other, that's gotta go through the
Okay,
whole
the process of the-
process of
Okay.
the state changing it, the town changing it. And that's, again, that's where I said that could be as much as 2026.
no, you can get what's called an approval. There's an approval method that you can go through to get, like that Ways Lane and any other, you have to get the official approval first before you can go any further with it. So, I mean, if that's an approach we want to take, maybe we want to look into that any of the property it's already within the infrastructure, the priorities. What about that Cone Road? Wasn't that someplace
Yeah.
within the area?
Yeah, that's certainly, I think the interesting case for this particular property, Joanne, is that this physical property is owned by the town,
Right.
which makes part of this process much easier in terms of the cost ramifications. So at least the upfront cost to the property to get started faster. So I'd be interested to, because I've looked at the map specifically. I'm glad you asked that question of Janet. I would love to have a deeper dive on that in particular. Like because I understand I think what you said she was saying, but I think if there was the discussion about the expansion of the sewer there, how that might potentially change it may take
Yeah,
another year.
right.
But at the same
Yeah,
time,
it'll take longer.
if it meant the change of the designation versus the time it's going to take to get the Act 250 permit, it may,
It may
those two
be
things
worth
may
it.
be worth it.
Right.
Right. Yeah,
No, with all of that being said, I still think that the number that Tim is coming in with, without any grant money or funding, is still suitable for what the need is, for what I thought we're here to
Yep.
kind of work on.
Yeah, and I think where Joanne's coming from, and I understand, is that, and I think we had this discussion too, is that obviously the overall schematic and idea and the dollar price point for kind of all the different levers for this project has a lot of potential. And then if we were able to find ways to augment it, either from a buyer's perspective too, let's say, make sure that we have first-time home buyers credits and you know, if there's any incentives for those types of tax incentive financing or anything like that that we could potentially leverage to make this even more feasible for both the town and for developers. How we
I
can,
mean, I think the town, now that it's, I think because the word's out there, the
Yeah.
airport might be worth something, whatever. I think the town might be looking to maybe possibly get some proposals from different people, I don't know, but I'm guessing.
yeah,
And if that's the case, I don't know what time or what the timeline is. And I would hate to miss out, if we think this could be a good idea, I'd hate to miss out on trying to get something done there and maybe have somebody else buy it and do something different with it, which is fine. I mean, if that's what the town wants. But if we as a town are looking for affordable housing, I'd hate to lose a spot like this. This is like a 1/3 of the property.
Yeah.
so it's a 62-acre property, Gordon? Ish?
60.15.
Okay.
60, and this is like 20 acres of it.
So
So it's a third of it.
It allows for other types or private
If
developer.
They want to do something with the rest of it, or if we want to just maybe try to keep the whole thing for this at this point in time, and I don't know what the need's going to be, 4 or 5 years down the road. We might want more, and land it's very hard to find a piece of land at a halfway decent price
Yes,
anywhere in this town,
Of quantity, too.
of
Quantity.
quantity.
this is
And
our best
when you,
shot.
With
when you
infrastructure.
when you get a project like this, the quantity actually helps on your pricing. If you do,
Lowers it.
if you do 40, 50 houses, if you do 100 houses, the more houses you do, the better deal you're gonna get on the project because of the quantity of what you're building. If you go to start on a smaller project, maybe you could put 2 or 3 houses there or whatever, your infrastructure cost, it's not the same as a project like this, but percentage-wise, it's gonna be a lot more than if you've got a larger project like this.
So Tim, what's the contractor's thought of a timeline? Was this a phased-in thing, or is he thinking all at,
They would probably start, I don't know.
Okay.
I mean, this is concept now, we're
because the
looking at
numbers that you're
this,
throwing out, I mean, I'm assuming are numbers today,
numbers today.
right?
Yep. And then not knowing what the state might do with different, energy things, this all meets energy codes as of today. It'll be propane heat, propane hot water, electricity, obviously. If things change and they might make you do something different, that might raise the price too. I don't know.
Yeah, well, if you're doing propane, a lot of the money that's out there isn't gonna be available for you for that,
Okay.
because
Well, I mean, that's fine. I understand that, but.
renewable energy is really the thing that you're paying for.
Right, but if the cost, it's something we can look into as a project if we decide to go this route. If you want to go with geothermal, or if you want to go with heat pump, if you want to go with something different, and you can get a grant, that's great, but if the grant is not as much as the increased cost of the building, so if it adds another $5,000 or $6,000 to the cost of the house, even after the grant, so say they give you 10 and it costs you 15 to implement what they're trying to do, the homeowner's gonna pay another $5,000. And I,
And you also, when you're thinking about grants for that, don't forget Efficiency Vermont is really there too. They
Yeah.
want to be at the table.
Yeah, I think, not shutting off any ideas, I think baseline, this is like I know you've personally put a ton of work into this, and I appreciate the effort. I think this is, I think collectively, the conversation that we all had, and I see Andrew's here, so obviously he understands from GNAT. I did also have a comment that someone said that the lens is very blurry. I don't know if there's some fog or something on the lens, but the comment is that when we had the presentation here, 2 months ago from Kyle, that kind of sparked a conversation, which we kind of hoped it did to some extent, right? I think we started off the meeting by saying, this is, to get the ball rolling, this is a vision of what is a possibility. Doesn't mean it's where we may end up, but it got the conversation started, and I think collectively we're seeing a little bit more activity and whatnot, so.
I mean, what's nice about, what's nice,
Has anyone talked with, the owner of the Crystal Palace?
Actually, we met there today.
You did?
Yes.
No, I think it was that one, sorry.
So,
What did she say?
what is that story?
Crystal Palace.
Because I think that would be an ideal spot to,
It is, but again, those units are gonna be in the $400,000 to $500,000 range. Yes.
you would,
Yep.
okay.
And again, I've looked at a lot of places trying to make it work. Different contractors, different developers, different investors. And it's very hard. I don't see any place in town where you're gonna beat this price. That's just from I've done a lot of work. It's a great idea. I'd love to hear it, because
There is no way in the world the Crystal Palace is getting renovated for under $350 a square foot.
Yeah.
And with that, all of a sudden, you're talking about $4.5 or $5 million to make that into apartments.
there you go.
That
Roof
just
alone.
doesn't work. They might work for
I'm just
luxury,
saying,
they might work for luxury condos, but not for affordable housing.
So,
okay.
so I've taken the presentation that we had got before, and there was 5 houses in the beginning of the route when you first come in, right about here. And they are right to the west of the power lines, if you look at Google Maps. There's power lines here. That's why they're built off to the edge. That piece of property, if we were to take that piece of property and just build 5 houses to get it started, just to say, hey, here's what we can do, here's 5 houses, let's get these 5 houses built. And then maybe after we do that, we could get the money and get in a developer to say, this looks good, we could do this, and then develop. I would love to see that happen, but just to get someone to come in and do it for the price we want, I think we could build those 5 houses as prefabs, bring them in for $120 a piece, with about $30,000 in grading fees, that's $150, and just drop them down and sell them for $160, $175.
But you still gotta get the water and sewer there.
right,
That's for $160, $175, that's what the extra increase in price, like $15,000 to
Are you
$20,000
talking
per
about
house.
the airport road still?
But we do need water and sewer, you're right, but
Yeah,
if
so,
we could get it started, then I think
But
someone
but
would
you're not gonna, you're not
plan
going to
plans for the
start
future.
anything, but you're not gonna even build a house there without water or sewer. You can't put one,
Right.
there's no place to put.
You think we could start 5 just to say that?
No, 'cause
and
how
for a
you-
plan,
still
well, no,
gotta-
get the sewer going in and say, here's 5, how about we do the rest of it now? And just keep it going and build the rest of it. I mean,
Right.
build them,
but-
sell them, build them, sell them.
And that's
And
basically what
you're
the
doing
plan
that.
is here, but you can't put a house there until you get the water and sewer, and that's a
Right.
big number, that's a couple $1 million.
Right, but we need to incorporate that or plan for that, because the town's gonna get that back eventually in tax money, revenue from selling these houses, from people who live
yeah,
there
I
over
think the
time.
question is whether or not even the property is, because there is some line, but it runs not to this
Not over-
direction.
That's correct.
And does not have the capacity. So even to start and make those livable, we would already have to have the line in place.
Do we not have capacity for 5 houses, or just, you know?
There's not, right now, there's nothing there, 0. At this point, wherever
Yeah.
here, there is no water or sewer there.
So is this, I'm trying to actually place it on the property line for, because this is not the parcel, right? This is
This is
the,
Google
This is the
Maps right
airport.
here. So you can see the houses that exist here, this area right here.
oh, so it's just adjacent to this.
Yeah.
Over here would be, I'm pretty sure over here is Levis. These are the
The Green Mountain Estates.
Green Mountain Estates, I think, in there,
So this would be Hayes,
or Hayes.
right?
Then Levis would be right in here. I think, is that correct? Or is this, would
Where
this
are
be?
you?
So this is Airport Road here.
Yep. Okay, so this is Sarah Buckley's property. She sold this little piece, used to be a, what would you
The little
call it?
barn there?
Yeah, there's a little, guy has a little garage
Yep.
that he keeps, stores
Yep.
things. All of this goes along, that's Hayes, still owns that gravel pit. This is all Levis.
Right.
At the top, the airstrip runs this way.
Right.
And this is Dr. Levis, owns all that.
And there is water and sewer too.
There is,
Right about
that's
there.
that is a huge hill from down here along this road
Mm-hmm.
up to there. So I don't know how you could get sewer without I'm sure
Well, no,
somebody
unless-
could. but-
No, unless you brought it across from Levis across to
Under
here.
the airport.
Yes, to
Oh,
down
to that
here
property,
along
no.
that road, I
No.
don't
So is
see
this,
it.
this red that you have indicated here?
That's an easement. That's a
Okay.
CVPS
Yeah.
easement, or it used to be CVPS, whatever they're called now.
So does that, I mean, it lines up with the entrance here. I mean, obviously it's an easement, but
This is just
I know, it's
very
rough.
conceptual.
I got it. No, I get it. I'm just trying to, yes.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Yes.
So Leon, I know you really want to go, and I really know you really want to get these houses built, but my pushback is, and I agree we need to do it, but how do we guarantee, what is the town going to do to guarantee that someone doesn't buy this, flip it quickly?
That's-
Are you guys going to be putting a covenant on them like we do for Habitat? There's an affordability covenant that stays on it for so many years?
My-
That's
my-
a decision.
My thought was, this is just my idea, that when the house is sold, it'll be whether it's a deed or covenant, whatever it is, that the house could not be sold for more than 3% per year increase. So it's 3% per year. So if someone wants to come in and buy it, the first year, they could make 3% on it, and that's it.
But the
And that's for the entire, the life of the property. So when you buy it, you know that you cannot sell it for more than 3% more than what you paid for it.
My idea, actually, Joanne, for this is to make it, the whole thing a land trust, because the town owns it. And then we can basically, we'll sell the houses that are on the property, but the land itself remains in the ownership of the trust, and the trust dictates the terms of there's no short-term rentals up there, and so it remains housing.
Gord, how
So
does,
you're going, you're,
It's like a mobile home? Is that, like,
Well, yeah, similar in a way theirs was set up, yes, but it's owned by, the house is owned, and they can live on the land, but because it's a covenant on the land for the land trust, they can say it can't be short-term rentals.
Gordon, how would that particular idea affect the tax rolls?
Well, it decreases the value
Right,
from just a pure appraisal.
right.
yeah, it's a shared equity situation.
so.
And I don't know if the town wants to be in
Suggest
that.
that before we go any further with any of this, that we bring in the, now that Shires is gone, they've merged it with the Housing Trust of Rutland and the Neighborhood Works. They're the ones that would have access to a lot of this money. And can we bring them back once they've reorganized and
So,
settled?
I actually
Bring
spoke
them
to,
back into the picture?
Gordon, you and I talked about this very briefly, but I spoke to the new executive director, and she's very eager to get down here and meet with us and start the discussion on how they can help in our community as well. So,
Okay, so that,
I know that the old Shires group and the people that were with them providing the financing were pretty clear they wanted it downtown, not outside of town.
right.
That's where they were most interested in developing. But that doesn't mean that's still the case. It might be if there's a good property, they would be interested.
So,
Yeah, I think that would be the next step, or one of the steps we take first before
so,
determining, or,
right, so
where we go.
Tim, is there anything that you need that we can do to help bring answers, bring help, assistance? What-
If people had, an idea of how to get grants and what grants, I don't have time to do that. I'm pretty busy with this, but if there's someone that has time to go and look and see what grants are available, how you go about getting them, what you've got to do, if someone has time to spend with the state and see if they can help us out with the Act 250 process. Because again, as it stands right now, it's my understanding that it's going to be pretty close to 2 years before this will be Act 250 exempt, if at all.
What about Seth?
I think we're
I mean,
meeting
he understands that.
So Seth is coming in to meet with the planning commission
next
next
Monday.
next Monday.
Yeah, I'm going to meet with him
Um,
Monday, so.
So I think that's absolutely a great conversation. I think, Joanne, this kind of goes into, kind of the next, which is talking about funding and grants. I think we need to, let's try to put together just a general pro forma or slash, document that we can kind of look at and understand the complexity of it so that we can start going out to the state and saying, okay, here's the opportunity, here's where we, see some potential, what's available. I think, what was her name, Kelsey at VLCT, or
Who?
the person you met with, Joanne, for grants, or the neighborhood?
Oh, can't come up with her name right now, but,
It's okay.
yeah, she's a good resource, but, did you share that document I put together, Tim? The priority housing with the different grants that are allowed, available?
I did, but it's, again, we've been spending a lot of time on we haven't gotten to the grant part yet.
Yeah, yeah.
But we're just trying to get something started here.
Yeah, but there is that document I put together with,
Yep.
certain grants that are applicable to the designated areas.
And I will,
I can work some more on it and
Yeah.
find, get it more fine-tuned if you'd like.
yeah, I think that would be good. I think
And I don't think this is one of those designated areas at
It-
this point in time.
it's not, but I would like to see,
Not, but you could get priority, you could get it approved through the process, possibly.
Right.
Possibly.
if we, like we said, if there is a way to, based on the trajectory or timeline of a project like this, with the infrastructure changes, how that might change the designation, put a timeline on that, and if it means that it saves another year off the project timeline because we're able to do that,
Right.
then that means we're that much closer to a potential product. So,
And how
What
does,
about some of the other land, that's owned by someone else right now, not the town-owned land? Have you talked to the, veterinary, the land that he owns?
I spoke with him a few years ago, and he said that he would have to, run it by his father, and it would probably only be agreed to sell it if it was going to be developed into work.
the property is owned by the town, there's a potential revenue generation for the town that has not been capitalized on, period. And, but I understand the need, and I think that we need to also, as part of the discussion that we'll have here soon, because we need to get to that, those recommendations that we need to make to the planning commission and in general about where we want to see change plan and zoning bylaws to potentially encourage and promote more development in those areas. About grant opportunities. Gordon, you sent another one over.
Yeah.
Can you just give us a quick breakdown of where you kind of are with things?
Sure. I know the grant that I was trying to grab, you're already doing that with the planning committee, so that's fine. But there's, this is for planning, like if we could get a group together, like, I like that document that John Burnham shared about EAHs, the employer-assisted housing. And if we could get a planning grant, and that might come through the Vermont Council of Rural Development. They have a planning grant that you can actually apply for, not really apply for, but fill out the Google form to say you're interested. And that has to be done by January 7th of next year, of 2025. And then from there, you'd get the select board's approval to go any further with it. So that looks like a great opportunity to put together some sort of an event, maybe in the spring around Earth Day, and sort of have something related to housing and energy that would bring people, collaborators together, you know, stakeholders, builders, all kinds of businesses, to come and talk about possibilities of forming a trust or whatever, I don't know the term for it, but where everybody contributes either money or in kind, like the land, the town would donate land per se, possibly, and then everybody pools their money together and this because we haven't got any. So I thought that would be a good opportunity for us to apply for that at least, and then go from there. What else?
So who's actually gonna, who's going to apply for this? Is that something you could work on, or is that,
The town would have to fill it out, your Gordon or whoever's authorized to do it for the town.
Yeah, I think that's something that we can work together on, and then, you know, obviously, a person from the town would have to apply for it.
Yeah, but I can fill this out, this is just a Google form to say, yeah, we're interested. And then if they get back to you, which they probably will fairly shortly after that, then the select board is made aware of it and, you know, they would have to sign on to it. So, do you want me to fill out that form and take it from there and see if we want to get this planning money?
is this planning money, or is this
Yeah.
money that, right, for a town plan, or is this money to go towards the housing itself?
No, to plan an event. To plan an event for
Based around
bringing
housing.
together stakeholders, builders, businesses, to form what is called an employer-assisted housing. If that was one of those documents John Burnham shared. And it seems, and there were some good examples of others who have done it. Banks have gotten involved, and, you know, businesses in the area. So it might be something we want to consider for just getting together with people who are interested in getting housing done for workforce specifically.
I mean, I think,
So do you want me to fill out that form?
Yeah,
It
I
just-
mean, if
Yeah.
it's-
I think for general interest, I think we might as well go
Right.
forward with it. And then,
Then we can decide what to do with it, yeah.
absolutely, once we find the specifics.
Okay, I'll do that. There's also money coming up in the beginning of the year from the Vermont Community Foundation. They have some money that would be available for economic development, housing, different things like that. So that's an opportunity.
And let me actually talk on that, Joanne, real quick, because and I know this is in the next section, So when I was at so we had several of us that were at the housing statewide housing conference back in November. And there was a meetup of folks who are on housing committees in their communities. I think there was maybe 20 or so of us that kind of met kind of impromptu in the atrium over coffee and cookies, but there was a discussion about what's working in certain towns like Stowe or Woodstock or Essex. From the Vermont, I believe the Vermont Community Foundation as well, specifically for outreach, marketing, and community education. And they're up to $2,000 available for, if we want to do a publication, if we wanted to do a website, if we wanted to do anything like that. Those are things that are like no matching grants, no anything. It's just literally a very simple application and up to $2,000. So that's something we need to put on our radar as well, and I think that those are going to be coming available in the next 30 to 60 days.
Yeah, that might be what I was,
Yep.
there's also, I don't know if you're familiar with what's called direct pay. Have you heard of that, direct pay?
No.
It's a new, fairly new concept where municipalities and other nonprofits that don't pay taxes can now get reimbursed for certain projects. So that seemed interesting, that we could dive into that a little bit more, or I could. And then everybody, instead of, there's no taxes involved, you get a check sent to you for the costs of what you've incurred, or part of the cost anyway, up to 70%, I think.
So would that help on back to a project like this, before and if it does become Act 250 exempt? Is there any money out there for the aid in the Act 250 process? So in other words, if it's going to cost $5,000 per lot to create this project, is there anybody out there, is there any groups out there that would donate the money to the town or to the developer to go through the Act 250 process to save on that part of the project?
Probably. I mean, it's some of the grants are very open and broad, so there could be money for that, yeah.
I mean, that's, again, every 1,000, 2,000, 5,000 that we could get is obviously going to lower or keep the buildings affordable. Because if it goes over again, I think we all came to kind of the conclusion that if it's over 200, then all of a sudden it's not affordable.
Right?
And that's where we're trying to stay within that range. And if the Act 250 raises the cost of the house or whatever, we're just spinning our wheels.
So Joanne, I don't know, have you looked on the VHFA, the Vermont Housing Finance Agency? There is, I'm quite sure they spoke about it there in Burlington, that there is some assistance with this land use and development relevant to the, there's several programs that they're doing, so check that out for the Act 250.
So I think, Joanne, just to keep things moving, I think you and I will get together over the next couple of days, and we'll kind of pull together different paths forward and get some more solid information for the upcoming meeting, using some of the plans and ideas of how we could possibly offset some of the costs on these projects moving forward.
Yeah, it would be nice to see with funding and grants available for engineering, for architecturals,
Yeah.
on the front end right now, because if we were to move on something, that's an immediate cost right then and there. I don't know if any of these grants would be applicable.
Well, there is a spreadsheet out in the shared folder.
Yep.
Yep.
That does indicate, lists out what I've done so far with grants, federal grants, state grants. So you can take a look at that and see what's.
Yeah, I think let's revisit now that we have a little bit more concrete.
We're getting closer to something.
We can now kind of put all the pieces together. So in the interest of time, I want to move the next item is education, marketing, and resources. I want to kind of blend that together with just kind of a general education of what myself, John, and I just got to clarify which John. Wantambi. We had multiple folks up in Cindy, but we also had there were multiple folks from the town that also were there as well. The new planning commission member, Carolyn, was there. We had met several representatives. I think in general it was one of the higher. It was a packed house. You could barely let anyone else in the building. I think they were just shy of 600 folks at I call it the Sheraton because that's what it was when I was a kid, but the DoubleTree.
It's a good sign.
They had some great sessions. I think the only downside to the entire thing from my perspective is that there were many sessions that if you were in one track, you wanted to be in the other track, and that made it a little bit difficult. But there were some great things on my side, I think, that came out of it, making great connections with folks who are in the same boat as us. Also hearing from other communities that are having struggles with some of the same issues that we are, whether it's short-term rentals or whether it's zoning or what we're going to do in terms of Act 250 and its new designations are we going to choose 1A, are we going to do 1B, and what the timelines are. So there's a lot around that. And John, I think unfortunately, the three of us sat together a couple times, so we got to hear the same story. But I mean, what were your thoughts in general?
Yeah, well, I guess getting back to that little group meeting that John had commented on, I did follow up with an individual who's from Heinsberg. They've had their housing committee since 2006. From that point in time to now, all they've been able to put together are 3 projects, and it's been through the Habitat. So it kind of shows that this process is a long process, and the fact that Tim's able to kind of come to the table with something that's presenting potentially 49. Now, granted, it's with the state. The reality is I'm looking at almost 20 years of an individual who's been sitting on this committee up there, and they've only, frankly, been able to accomplish 3 houses. I mean, I think we've done that on Jennifer Lane alone.
Yeah.
One thing, just thinking about when, we all kind of sat here a couple months ago and we were looking at the plan from 1989 and we went, oh, this is the same story. It's the same story in 1989. It was the same story in 2001. It was the same story for the previous 4 housing task force or groups that have met together. And hopefully all of their work has led to the same moment of maybe now there's enough traction to start seeing rubber meet the road and moving forward.
Yeah, and then I guess furthermore, I mean, it was reiterated that the sweet spot is the $200,000 range. I mean, that was kind of reiterated throughout the course of some of the sessions that I sat in. So, I mean, that seems to be a general number across the state, and that's probably driven by construction costs.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's a matter of, income or anything. It's just sheer construction. And the fact that the town has the land in this particular case is the only way that even makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, should we, or maybe this is for later in the meeting, but should we try to get something together, this proposal, something like this, to give to the select board from our group, so at least they're aware of what we're working on, what we're thinking, because I'd hate to lose a piece of property that could work for us. If someone else came, depends on what the town wants to do with it, but if
So I do know that based on, I just received the agenda for next Tuesday's select board meeting and the potential of approving or reviewing and approving a potential RFP for that property is on the agenda for next Tuesday. So that would clearly have a timeline attached to it of when we would want proposals to come back, and what specifically we're looking for the use of the property. So yes, if this is something, obviously, I think we as a board, as a committee, could make a recommendation, given, our various tracks of involvement in the community, But I think it would be important that would potentially carry some weight.
And we don't, obviously, we don't have the money to go,
No.
we, as a board, don't have the money to go out and purchase something like this. But at least if we had a concept and an idea for the select board, they might say, this sounds like a good idea, let's maybe move forward with it and try to see how it works, or whatever, I don't
Following
know.
up on what John was saying, if we could do a pro forma on what the potential revenue looks like on on build-out.
Yeah, and I think, oh, sorry, John.
Sorry, no, quick question. So when you just mentioned there's an agenda item for the select board meeting, what drove that to be an item? Do you know are they looking for RFPs for that land, for that 60 acres? And why all of a sudden is that now something they're looking for?
Because of us.
Oh,
Yeah, what is that?
So, you know, when we met and we had a presentation, that's kind of started the conversation with folks. And instead of having people come, you know,
one at a time. Yeah.
let's make a concerted effort to say, this is what we're looking for, here's a timeline to expect a potential decision on these RFPs. So that we're not, it's as transparent as possible.
I get that, but
So is the
are we as a
select-
task force gonna put it together an RFP and submit it, or are we talking
No.
about?
No.
What I would think would happen, and what's happened in the past, is that the select board will receive RFPs. They may very well ask the opinion of the housing
Correct.
task force.
Yeah.
That's what I would expect them to do, to see if they had a favorite and why, or a preference and why, not a favorite. And they'll take that into consideration. That's usually what would happen.
Correct.
Although I clearly am not on the select board, so.
What you want?
Blinders up here.
So are these RFPs coming in just for the airport road, or
Well,
are these open to?
So I will speak, so any property that, any physical property that the town owns, which the town of Manchester does own this parcel, the 60 point some odd acres. If we want to sell it, there has to be a public,
Warning.
public warning and request for other offers before it was going to be submitted, based on the fact that there had been interest recently in the property. I think it made sense to the select board to ask for this to potentially be the direction that we head in, because we want it to be as open and transparent as possible. Instead of, things happening, Gordon getting a phone call randomly and having to go show the property and having it, let's just put it this.
The sad thing about that is if the town sells it, there goes, the whole idea of, it adds to the cost,
Yeah.
right? Like Leon, you're saying you were saying it should be in the land trust, that would help with, keep it affordable, we could the town could regulate it.
Yes.
If they go out and sell it, that changes like the whole makeup of what can be put there. Because the person who buys it's gonna have to recoup that money, and there goes, as, Tim was saying, there goes, adds to the infrastructure costs.
And I think, in general, just speaking from my perspective, is that it's also important in terms of transparency that if and when a parcel is being considered for sale, that we have it as an open process like it is right now. And because we did lose a lot of time on the depot property, right? We lost a couple years in that entire process. Like the many plans and tens of thousands of dollars that had been spent throughout various levels of the project to still be the same 3 buildings with J. Crew sitting there a couple years later. So, I think what we should do, knowing that obviously if the select board does approve the proposed RFP, there would be a certain timeline. It would not be 15 days. We are certainly going to meet again before then. And I think between now and the next meeting, we should put together, I'll help you with whatever documents we need to put together. Like, here's a potential of what could happen based on economics we can look over. I think, Gordon, based on your recommendation, is that the select board would get those proposals, but we would already be ready with ours, our response, or not a response, but if we were asked for our opinion. But I think at the same time, knowing the collective data that we have and knowledge, I don't think it would hurt to at least help put together the document of what we think would be the best opportunity. Ultimately, it's not our decision. Be very clear, it's not our decision. We are not making any,
No.
we have no power in
Just
that. We're an
recommendation.
advisory and recommendation role here.
And I think everybody should keep their mind open.
Yes.
I mean, let's take a hypothetical that somebody came along and said, I'll give you $2 million for that property. That would allow the town to have capital to maybe purchase a different property that is within, closer to downtown. I mean, there are properties, they're just expensive.
Right.
There's always a possibility. I think that's extremely unlikely.
Yeah.
But keep an open mind until you see what
Yeah.
comes forward. I mean, I love Tim's proposal. There could be another idea that takes part of that
Yeah.
and a different one, who knows?
Yeah.
And every obstacle is not necessarily a stopping point. It is an opportunity for being creative and finding an alternative solution. So, all right. I want to just take a moment, and so some of the things that I pulled out of the meeting was, Cindy, I don't remember if you sat in the same meeting as us, but Nate from the Vermont Housing Finance, he is the data guru for the state of Vermont. And he is although I have to say he started off jokingly with a joke about how the only president from Vermont was Calvin Coolidge. That ruffled some feathers in the Chester Arthur crowd that was there. But regardless, I just wanted to, you all have, or if you don't, it's underneath here.
No, I got it.
So this is a combination of all the data that, if you haven't had an opportunity to go to housingdata.org, it is incredibly well detailed. It's constantly being updated with information and data sets from several organizations. One, the US Census Bureau, using both the census data from 2020, as well as the American Community Survey. There's also information from AirDNA, which is updated regularly. In fact, they have short-term housing, short-term rental data up to the month that's being put into the system, as well as the Vermont Department of Taxes. So one of the things that I just wanted to put out there quickly is that there was a question about how do you make up the housing need that came from the housing needs assessment. And the question was, well, where did you come up with a number of 24,000 to 36,000? And really, it's quite simple. There's two tracks that you could potentially look at. One is that pre-pandemic, we were at a 1% growth rate. During the pandemic, we were at a 1.8% growth rate. If you were to look at that growth rate over the next 6 years, plus what is believed to be normalization of appropriate vacancy rates, as well as ways to address homelessness and our loss of homes, whether it be from flood, whether it be from houses. We have a very old and aging housing stock. So that's where, if you can see on the first page where it breaks it down into different color groups, basically the 24,000 is a 1% increase. Through the blue is the 36. Now, what I've done is I've taken that data, broken it down into some different spectrums to look just at Bennington County. And I think some of the places I think I want to take a look at, if you can, is at the bottom of page 2. This actually came from the Bennington Regional Plan that was just approved this past month. And it looks at the housing needs assessment, the specific targets, and I want to be clear, these are not like mandates. These are targets based on the needs that I just explained. And looking in particular within the Bennington region, the existence of public water and wastewater capabilities, local residential density allowances, our average annual permits for new housing units, and the housing needs and market demands, which have been done in local studies over the past 5 to 10 years. So at the very bottom, you're going to see a little chart, and you can see it's broken out between Manchester and Manchester Village. I'm only going to focus for right now on Manchester, but you can see our annual average is 13.2 permits per year. That's how many new homes are being permitted on average over the last 5 years. Based on the target for the entire county, which is roughly 985 homes that are encompassed within the Bennington Regional Commission's jurisdiction, 985 homes are needed at the lower end, that 1% growth level. If we continue to increase at the 1.8%, that's going to get us to a target of 1,588 homes over the next 6 years in order to meet the demands of both our growth rate, our loss of homes due to all those other reasons, and stabilizing both our rental vacancy rates and homelessness, unhoused. So if you then take that 985, you break it out, Manchester has been, based on the items I said, existing public water, et cetera, that's, the Bennington Regional Commission has said 200 of those 985 are homes which need to be in Manchester, should be in Manchester over the next 6 years. And I understand that that's quite a big number. I think it's also really interesting, and we'll point out one other coinciding number here in just a moment. But the next page breaks out a little bit more, but I'll explain that essentially 50% of the homes that are required based on our aging population, how many people we have per home versus how many bedrooms we have on average per home. We need more smaller houses, meaning we need 1 bedroom, studio, 2 bedroom, less than 3 bedrooms. 50% of those homes should be in that area. And that's to, like I said, to cater to smaller household, younger workers, empty nesters, and retirees. If you look at the breakout on the bottom of page 2, if you take ADU and 2 units, a lot of those obviously account for additional units that can be added to an existing dwelling, right? So 2 unit would be potentially the case for duplexes. And then if you look also at the breakdown of where the bedrooms are, it's roughly, it's 50%. The other interesting thing is that it's 62% of the homes need to be on the purchase side, owner homes rather than rental homes. But I think I mentioned this in the previous meeting, Bennington County has one of the highest rates of folks living outside their means. So one of the greatest percentage of folks who are paying greater than 30%, and one of the largest percentage, especially in Manchester, who are paying greater than 50% of their income to housing, which puts us on a really dangerous track, right? So based on that, there are some recommendations, and I apologize that the flipping back and forth is kind of crazy here, but, and I have a question coming up for Cindy, so be prepared. Looking at rental pricing, I want to make one caveat here before we move forward. I asked Nate about this in particular. A lot of the data specifically around housing in communities that don't have larger rental management companies that are managing these properties do not report their rental rates, right? So there's a number on here that is really, it seems really low. And the reason is because almost all of the data that was captured was from Shires Housing and communities that already have subsidized rental prices. So the average rental price looks incredibly low for Manchester at $769. Like, it's not even, I can't find anything.
You won't.
You won't find anything in that. So I want to put a big star by that and say that that is not an accurate depiction of where we're at. So given that number and an understanding of where we are in our median income and how much percentage based on this number is already showing above 30 and 500, that makes the potential for that risk, those risky folks who are struggling to pay, even higher. So the average median income in Manchester right now, according to the ACS, is $87,985, which is higher than the county's average median income of $68,000. And I just broke down some different pay structures, essentially looking at the folks who are earning between 80% and 100%. That essentially will give you a good idea of where rental pricing kind of needs to be. And I actually just spoke to Randy Lowe today, the superintendent of BRSU, to ask, just in particular, because I knew what we were going to be discussing tonight, what is the starting salary for a teacher out of the gate at a BRSU school? And she said, with no, start like a brand new teacher, no history of teaching, no masters, it's $45,500, right? Given that number, and Cindy, I know you're doing the math in your head, that already qualifies them for housing subsidies. So, when we're looking at the price point here at $200,000, that actually works out based on affordability for the average county median income of $68,000, affordability-wise. Given a 5% down payment, our current interest rates at roughly 6.5%, that's not taking into account any down payment assistance that may be coming from first-time homebuyer programs or anything like that. So that's kind of why that, as John was saying, as Tim was saying, the 200,000 number, at least for Bennington County, if we're looking at market rate, is a point where this is meeting in that middle. So any place that we can find improvements and assistance to get folks into these homes that may be under that level, between that 80 and 100% of average median income, I think that's really beneficial because they're not going to qualify for anything at Shires Housing. They're not going to qualify for any of those programs, and they're really struggling. This also goes along the same lines of understanding the average price point for homes. Ideally, the 163 to 270, I know that's a $100,000 range, but looking at a 30% like 30% of your income is going towards housing or less, that's the price point that we are struggling to find housing in that price bracket. Which, if we're able to accomplish that and find more opportunities to do that, I think it's going to be incredibly beneficial. I'm going to skip ahead through some of this information. I do want to point out one thing, is that our short-term rental number, according to AirDNA, which was the same information that was used in the STR impact study that was done 2 years ago, has the percentage of our homes now being used for, as of last month, was 213 or 7.6%. So since the study has been done, it has increased 1.46%. While our housing stock has decreased 0.4%, which is amazing, right? And if you remember the number, we said 200, and I want to be very clear, I am not proposing a complete banishment of short-term rentals because it has an incredible impact on our economy. I think there's some numbers in here about how much it's actually impacted our economy, but the number of our projected need for housing over the next 6 years just happens to be the same number, as short-term rentals. And then the last piece I just wanted to outline is on page 8, and this kind of goes into our next discussion. And that is just overall recommendations that we have been asked to supply, and I think we are well suited to supply to augment the town plan, both in the short term in making sure that the conversation is being had, and then in the long term for any changes that need to happen in the plan, as well as any potential changes in zoning or bylaws or a focus that we as a community or we as a committee believe are important. And some of the information that I pulled from this came from the Manchester Business Association's employer survey. It comes from the Bennington County Regional Plan. It comes from the Manchester Town Plan. It also comes from the Housing Needs Assessment. It also comes from the Short-Term Rental Impact Study. And there's one other which I'm blanking on, but I won't waste your time. But essentially, we talked about rental pricing. For median household income, units priced at or below for rentals below $2,200. Non-subsidized low-income households, so in the range of the 50 to the 80, you're looking at an $867 to a $1,270 rental payment on average. Shars Housing, we know that they have opportunities below those price points. And essentially, when you look at the price point also, what it bakes out to be for an hourly wage, I mean, we know what you're advertising right now at, it's always there at Stewart's, right? Stewart's, they're paying $17 an hour. $17 an hour as an individual will not put you into these housing solutions. In order to be at that average, you're at roughly $25 an hour. Now, obviously, if you have multiple people in a household, that does change your perspective a little bit, but that also, we're talking about that young teacher from MEMS who we have lost 3 music teachers in the last 2 years.
Because they can't afford to be here.
They can't afford to be here. 3 art teachers and 2 music teachers in 3 years. So what this does, and I'll give you folks, there's not enough time potentially to talk about this because we've only got about 15 minutes, but what this is a consolidation of all of those talking points, those discussion points from all of the different things like things that our employers are asking us for. And if you want to take a look at under areas of improvement policy and zoning, these are just some of the ideas that came both from our discussions as well as from the town. Simplifying permitting and approval processes for housing developments. I think that we've all discussed that in various levels. A creation of what's possible, pre-approved plans to speed development processes. So whether it's an ADU that we have ready that's available for everyone on this street based on their property, or whatever the case may be, to make your process even easier on the DRB. Because I think the perspective is what's possible, instead of what's not allowed.
Right.
I think there's a lot to say about that. Expanding zoning permissions to encourage dense mixed-use development, particularly near our town centers. That's what we've talked about. Shires Housing really wants to focus on the center community of our community. And I think there's more implications to that, obviously, too, specifically around traffic. The recent traffic study, we were all shocked to hear that every day on Bonnet Street, there's over 3,000, 3,500 cars that come through that intersection. I'm not shocked. It's because you see it every time you pull out on Cross Road. There is, like today, it was 27 cars with no break coming into Manchester to work, because we know what, 41% of the workforce is coming from another community to work in Manchester. So anything we can do to centralize that is going to bring less traffic to our roads. Implementing a cap on short-term rentals to preserve long-term rental inventory. That goes side by side with at least the minimum of registry.
I've been pushing that for a while, pushing the cap.
Yep. Create clear, easy-to-follow development and zoning documentation to remove verbose, hard-to-understand bylaws. Remove requirements for parking. Review requirements for parking and its requirements to encourage a more walkable downtown, allowing for greater utilization of valuable real estate. So there's other things in here. I'm sure Joanne will love this. Infrastructure development, investing in community thermal networks, applying for federal state grants. Basically, if you guys can all, I know we discussed about having this discussion today. I think that there's a lot in here. But I want to, before we're done in the next 15 minutes, I want us to collectively just talk about what we believe, each of us, is what you believe to be the most important change that you could see our included in our town plan or discussed as an inclusion of our town plan that you see in your respective areas. Whether it's a change in zoning, a registry on short-term rentals, like what do we all have? And I would like to take that and kind of make that as a priority list of what we would want to present, because anyone on the planning commission that is going to sit here and read 14 pages of recommendations, it's not going to happen. I mean, but I think if we can, these are all, again, just like the presentation from Kyle, this is a place to start our discussion. Where are the places that we see as the most important pieces to recommend of changes to address the housing needs here in Manchester?
John, can I make a suggestion before we
Yep.
do that kind of conversation? Since Victoria's here in the audience, does she have anything she wants to say or contribute before we get into whirlwind of discussion and leave her?
Sweet of you, Joe. As a former housing task force person member, I'm really excited to see this new group moving mountains. It's not easy, is it? And
Nope.
Tim, I'm sorry I missed the first 10 minutes, so I'm hoping that Jonathan can catch me up
I can certainly do that.
after the meeting. But I look at the town plan as a business's strategic plan equivalent. So to the point of the recommendations from the housing task force, to look at it as your strategic plan and vision of what you want to accomplish, or what Manchester should accomplish in the next 5 years. And that 5 years, as we know, goes like this. As soon as that town plan gets adopted, within a year, best practices, maybe 2 years, the town should be working towards their next town plan. And I would go as far as say that a 5-year strategic plan doesn't even make sense anymore, and it should be a 5-year with an 8-year extension. So when you're creating your wish list tonight, think beyond the 5 years. Like, think 8 years, because at the end of the month, we don't have a town plan, right? Or not the end of the month, but in a couple of months, we don't have a town plan.
We will,
What's that?
we will.
Well, we will, but we shouldn't be scrambling and asking Bennington County's regional plan to scramble on our behalf and create a town plan in 2 months.
Well, they're not making a town plan. What they're doing is they're
I
updating
know
some.
what they're doing,
Okay.
because I was at the meeting.
Yeah.
So, but I would look at that vision of not necessarily in the immediacy, idea of a land trust. I'm fairly familiar with land trusts. You've got your work cut out for you, and anything that us community members can do to make your job easier, tap on us.
Yeah. Thank you, Victoria. Thank you, John, for that.
Yeah, I really appreciate that.
And I'm going to be scolded at the next meeting that I didn't ask you to come to the podium. Okay, thank you, Victoria. So, again, let's just get the ball rolling. I know what you're going to say.
Well, yeah, you do. And that's, in regards to housing, yes, that is exactly what I was going to say. And, and I'm not sure, I don't know, I don't have it in front of me, what our sizes are for our ADUs here in town as well. Like, do we have a minimum for ADU size in town, Gordon?
You have a minimum.
They have a maximum.
They're yeah, 900 square feet.
900 square feet.
Or 30%, not a third, 30% of the square feet of the house, whichever is greater.
That's the maximum.
That's the max.
But it can be under that. It could be like a garage
50
converted.
feet different.
Right, that's
If you
right.
can put everything you need in.
Right. Yeah, that's great, because I'm trying to build a house in Bennington, and they have a minimum of 20 by 20. You can't be smaller than that,
400 square feet.
which is, sometimes, you want to build smaller. And so it's making things hard. So I'm glad Manchester doesn't have those kind of regulations in place, because,
I should say that I don't know that.
no, I don't think we do. And
I don't
that
think
is-
there's a minimum, it's just
Yeah.
the 900
And
square
that
feet or 30%.
encourages more ADUs to be built, because I think ADUs might be one of the answers
Well, the-
to our housing
And
issue.
following up on ADUs, what about non-owner occupied?
Non-owner occupied houses with ADUs on them?
To build ADUs? Because right now, it has to be an owner occupied.
Yeah, I
Property.
think that's a good plan. I don't think we should require that.
Right,
So-
well, that's why I'm bringing it up.
Yeah, I
as
know,
far as part of-
I agree. So,
You can just build a tiny home.
well, there's sewer things required as well, and tiny homes usually are on trailers, so it would be more of a small home. It's the best way to put it.
Well,
So I'm assuming, based on my prediction, that you were talking about SDRs in the registry?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I think that we also need to be proposing, I noticed in there that there's like an incentive. I go back to Tim, having conversation with a developer. What are we doing? And that article that we had from, was it Rutland, where they actually look like they're open for business. They're encouraging contractors to come. We need to be doing that as a community to encourage people to come in and, invest in these, developments. I don't know how to do that, but I just think that needs to be a priority, that that Manchester looks like they are open to business and welcoming people to, develop here.
I'm glad you pulled that out, because that was when I actually wrote this out, I said the what's possible. Like showing folks, yes, we have land. Just like, for instance, a great example is like we had the conversation. We've owned the land at the airport for how many years? Right? When the discussion was started and it was public, it began a conversation which then made it hey, maybe I could do this, maybe I could do that, maybe I could see this as a possibility. We have to have that as I say it again, here's what you can do, not what you can't do. It's important to have those rules and to have those guardrails, but at the same time, it does make us look more open for business.
I also think, Jonathan, the what's up, you can do is also gets the homeowners thinking too, because, okay, we're talking about people who are living in large houses or they've got a house on a large piece of land, if you can show them, here are, as you said, here are some pre-approved plans for ADUs. Oh, I don't have to go to the design, sorry, I forget the name of your board, the design board, right? And get the approval because this plan has already been approved. I can just say, I'm gonna go to get a building permit, get approved, and do it. So there's two aspects to that, you know, what we can do.
Great.
I mean, something like that also, if, and I'm just thinking, and when the tax bills go out, and I know it's probably not the time, but when the tax bills go out, if the state had some type of, because the state's looking for housing, state's looking for rentals, state's looking for housing, could there be a way that the state could give a taxpayer, town of Manchester, whatever town, some type of credit on their tax bill if they showed they had a rental on their property? I don't know. It's just something out there. If there was an incentive.
Yep.
If someone had an affordable rental, if someone had an incentive to do something, and it's gonna save them a little money, maybe they'll think twice. Well, you know, if I can save $500 or whatever, $1,000 on my tax bill, maybe I'll rent out a room rather than just. If there's no incentive, I don't think anybody's really gonna wanna do it.
Yeah,
That's just
I
my.
think that's right. I'm sure Victoria remembers the presentation from Woodstock where there was some money that the town was proposing to help pay. Because the biggest problem, as Tim knows very well, because we're talking to a contractor today about some property. And he said basically, and this is shocking to me, the cost of building here is twice what it is in Greenwich, Connecticut.
There you go.
One of the wealthiest.
I'm not shocked.
Twice.
But this is Greenwich, Connecticut, the most expensive neighborhood in the country, pretty much. And it's cheaper to build there. And that's because of the lack of labor here.
Yep.
So when somebody says you could build an ADU, you can have a plan, but the
Yeah.
cost is too high unless it's supplemented by the town in some way.
And I,
That's
This
just-
happened to my coworker. She can't build an ADU on a property that she has access to
because of the cost.
because
And-
of cost.
Well,
And-
the state does have a $50,000
It doesn't matter.
even that.
It's
It's
That's
still,
only in
even with
certain
that.
it doesn't matter.
You can't make the numbers
No.
work any way you look at it.
100%.
And I do want to say, there is, on page 7, when you get a chance to look at it, this is the most up-to-date median home sale prices. When I looked at this with Nate last week, or 2 weeks ago, by the way, the purple is Manchester. So this is the average median price. Up until last month, Manchester was still on a trajectory to far outpace the increase of median home prices. In fact, it looked like it was never going to come down, and it finally plateaued at 518,000 as the median, which is up from the state of Vermont average, which is just like 310, and the county, which is on a decline of around 211,000. So we are significantly higher, and we were on a skyrocketing trajectory to hit the ceiling. So I understand why your comment about it's so expensive. Not only is it labor, it's showing in the pricing here on our average homes. So we're hitting up on 7 o'clock. I've got STR registry ADUs, looking at particularly the importance of those in a non-owner occupied fashion.
John, I'd add,
Yeah.
sorry, not to, but I would add to the STRs, forget about registry, well, not forget, but if we want to make an immediate impact on keeping our housing stock, at least in either purchase and or rental, that there's a moratorium on any new STRs being allowed, period.
Well, we can't stop it unless we require them to have licenses for the STRs. So by having a registry, we issue licenses, then we can cap how many licenses we issue. And that creates the moratorium.
Yeah.
However you have to do it.
That's,
Can I ask a question about the SDRs? One of us, and I had a conversation with someone, how come, you're allowed to make income off from your private property when if you're doing a short-term rental, how come it's not being, are they being taxed like a business?
Yes.
They are, okay.
Yes.
Yep, and you pay the rooms and meals tax as well.
Yeah,
The pay.
and this is within a
I just wanna make
residential,
sure.
this is within a residential neighborhood, which is technically not allowed to be businesses. So in a sense, we already have rules in place to prohibit it, but we are allowing it anyway.
I just wanted to clarify what some of the rules were. Thank you.
And, I think there has been guidance from the town's attorneys that this should not be done. However, I do believe that there was a piece of that, and this is just my own view, this is not of the town or the select board, I'm going to preface that and say it out loud, that may change based on the most recent ruling coming from
Bennington.
Burlington,
Burlington.
which allowed the city to
Yeah.
regulate,
Oh, yeah.
which
time.
up until that point, that was outstanding.
Yeah, they lost a lawsuit.
Now,
against
certainly
it.
that will go to the Vermont Supreme Court, I'm sure, but anyway, that's out there.
I'd just like to throw out a couple before we end.
Yep,
For your list, Jonathan.
yep,
Yeah, I like the idea, and I think Cindy hit upon it too. The pre-approved model homes, one bedroom, two bedroom, and have those, like, hire somebody or have a designer create those models so they're available to an individual or to a builder. And it's a short-term thing and it's a long-term thing, that they would be on file with the town. And then the other thing would be renewable energy. I know that I'm big on that, but I think there's going to be a need to build houses with renewable energy because we have to meet the goals of the state and our own town about energy emissions. And so it makes sense, I think it makes sense to ensure that renewable energy is used in any of the houses we build.
okay. And, as Victoria's sitting here, I'm staring at the face community collaboration. I think, fostering public and private partnerships where possible is going to be incredibly important. It was brought up to me that we should just allow people like Joe Miles to do exactly what he's doing. I applaud Joe Miles and the product that he's doing and the project that he's doing. And I think we should use that as a model to say, how can we help you do more of those? So that if Orvis or if Equinox or if whomever wants to do the same project, we help them find the pathway to do that.
And that's what that employer-assisted
Yes.
housing program is, which I think is great, and that may be something we can work on, organizing
Yep.
a workshop on that.
All right. Well,
704.
it's 7:04, so I'm running along. So
Did we set our next meeting, by the way?
I was actually just gonna, that was the next thing I was gonna say. Based on a 4-week plan, that would put us at the 9th of January. And
When's MLK?
the 18th. 20th, sorry,
Yeah.
20th. Also Inauguration Day,
9 sounds good.
I'm actually out of town that day,
on the 9th,
on the
on the 20th.
on the 20th.
Yeah, I will probably be too. But,
No, I'm actually out of, I'll be in Canada,
okay.
just by chance.
What day are we talking?
So we're looking at Thursday, January 9th.
Yeah, I'm not available, sorry.
Yeah.
Because you've got your meeting, so,
No, I have, well, it's a different habitat, yeah.
Okay.
habitat meeting.
is everyone else okay with it that day?
I'm good with the 9th.
Yep.
Okay.
No, it's fine.
I know where you live if you're not. Is there, just quickly, Victoria, is there anything else? Okay. Thank you for showing.
I was in town at 5:30, so I was like, I'm just
So,
Thanks.
is it January 9th?
January 9th.
January 9th.
Yep,
At 5:30?
correct. All right,
I make a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I second it.
all in favor?
Oh, I'm sure, you're the one who probably supposed to say that.
I keep forgetting.
All right, I'll take that as a yes. Thank you, everyone. Have a great Christmas holiday.
Thank you, everyone.
You're the chair of the
Bye.
DRB, right?
Good
Tim?
holiday.
What's that?
Aren't you the chair of the DRB?
Yeah.
Yeah, yes, that's why you're still doing that.
I just.
Oh, I have plenty of these, but yeah, thanks, Jonathan.